Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com, also powered by lineups.com. Nate and Josh coming back to you with one more episode for this year's NBA action. Going to be taking a look at the NBA draft. Got some looks for those bets you might want to get down on Wednesday night this season, contrary to prior seasons where it's been on Thursday. So we will be getting into that stuff here for you nice and early. Get into the looks that we've got for you. Also have some thoughts. There's been massive trades going on in the last 24 hours, and it actually probably has impacted things a ton, especially in the Eastern Conference. As we know, the Celtics have shelled a couple of their big names from the last couple of seasons. We're going to take a look at how that might impact things. Mostly just going to give you our looks for the futures here after it's just been a couple days in the NBA Finals, and we've got some fresh markets. I'm in love with the Magic, but we'll talk about that towards the end. We're going to jump right into the draft stuff first, Nate. So go ahead and give us your first best bet here for the NBA Draft 2025.
Yeah, everybody's talking about, 1, 2, 3. We know what 1, 2 is going to be almost certainly. But 3 as VJ Edgecombe, I think it's worth fading that idea that Daryl Morey and the Sixers are just going to sit there, use their third pick on this guy who is an elite athlete, two-way player. So I think he might follow the fourth. And I think getting 4-1 on your money for any sort of scenario where that happens is worth a stab here. The Hornets are pretty much on the record as like, we also love this guy. Hopefully they wouldn't trade up to get him, but clearly I think they would take him over Con Kneppel if that is the choice here. I mean, you got to be out of your mind to think like as a rebuilding team, like Con Kneppel belongs on like the Houston Rockets or something, like someone that just like needs one more connective piece, one little like offensive player he's not a two-way player. He's not going to be good on defense in the NBA. Versus Edgecombe is kind of like a foundational piece to try to build around here for the Hornets. So I think they would absolutely take him. And it's just a matter of like, how much is this misdirection from the Sixers being like, we like him. We're not interested in Ace Bailey necessarily or Trey Johnson. I think the Trey Johnson fit doesn't make any sense for the Sixers. And a team trading for Trey, why would they have to go all the way up to 3 for that, right? I mean, they could trade with the Jazz at 5. Or the Wiz at 6 probably and still get the man. So I think we're talking, I agree with you in terms of thinking Ace Bailey being the third pick, being kind of the wild card. Just the fact that he did not work out for any teams, as we all know at this point. I might think Daryl Morey is a guy who's often flouted like traditional things in that sense. It's just like, I don't care. I want to get the best player. I'm going to move things around. I'm going to build an entire franchise around James Harden, whatever. Like Ace Bailey has a ton of talent, clearly has the third most talent in the draft, and they might just go for him. So that would leave the Hornets to take Edgecombe, and I think that would leave good odds if you have that as the fourth pick.
Yeah, there's a couple ways I see this working, and you're right. Let's put that one up for what I'm talking about, because these picks are completely correlated with Ace Bailey going third, Edgecombe going fourth. And so just talking about it from a little bit more of a bird's eye view, the idea here is that Philly is either interested, in my opinion, in Bailey or Edgecombe, right? Or trading out. Those are the two options. And the potential trade outs here, I think, still work in our favor for the order to go Bailey third, Edgecombe fourth. And the reason being is that if you are going to trade into third, I would say that the reason that you're doing it is to make sure that you can get Ace Bailey at that point, knowing that like he's the third best player that everyone's talking about. He would be the guy that teams would trade up to go get into the third pick. That would be the theory behind him being a good bet, especially at 6-1 right here. Because what we're saying is here, I think there's really like 3 guys that we're talking about in the 3-4 range. It's Bailey and Edgecombe, and then I think Johnson enters the conversation as well. Has had some really good workouts in a way that really pumped him up after those recent workouts for teams. As far as the 76ers taking Bailey, like it's between Edgecombe and Bailey to me that they would take them if they stay there. And if they stay there, like like you said, I see them taking the high upside because they don't really need either player with the roster that they have. But if you're in the third pick, you don't leave potential like really, really high ceiling guys with their future on the table just to trade out and get more picks that aren't really going to help you on the timeline that you currently have anyway. Right. So the likelihood that it goes 3-4 in this range is based on also in the fourth pick. If someone trades into the fourth pick, to me, it's likely to make sure that they get Edgecombe or Bailey, right? Same concept here. But at that point, like you would assume that teams would reach further into the third pick then the 4th to get Bailey, knowing that he's rated so much more highly. And he didn't work out for anybody. There's a lot of like almost seemingly misleading news that like Bailey, sort of stunted the 76ers, right? He just specifically didn't go to he just didn't go to tryouts. Like he didn't work outside me. Like he didn't really work out for any team. He had invites from a number of them, declined the ones that he got, and just didn't work out. So it's not really personal to the 76ers, and there's no fodder coming out of their camp that they care or that they're like specifically like staying away from him because of that.
Yeah, and I mean, any thought of like redundancy that like, oh, he's going to play the same role as Paul George, like you got to bridge to the future here as the Sixers. Like you don't got to worry about that. You take the best available player. Like I said, that's Daryl Morey's MO. And hope that he can be a foundational piece next to Maxey and McCain here. I don't see why he'd add another guard like Trey Johnson in that sense. So, I got a split pick here centered around the 14th pick as books are straddling the line of the first round here with Yegor Demin, who is very polarizing in terms of the scouting reports. Basically, I mean, quick comp is just like young Joe Ingles. Like he's just a lefty who moves at his own pace, a great passer. But I mean, the processing speed that you see at BYU, right, playing in that league is not the same as you'll get at any level in the NBA. And I mean, he's going to have to guard threes. He's going to have to guard guys who stand in the corner. Like he's not going to be able to guard any point guard in the NBA. So that's why I'm fading him in terms of saying like, at least he's not going in the top. He's not a lottery pick. I mean, he's been linked to Memphis at 18, Nets at 19. I've seen him mocked to the Nets at 8, and I just don't think the Nets would have to reach like that when he's probably going to be available later. But I mean, he has a very slow broken jumper at the moment. I mean, it could be fixed, but Joe Ingles had shot too. It just takes a couple minutes for him to line it all up, right? Get the elbow cocked. And Joe Ingles is a solid teammate. Solid presence in the NBA of 5 years ago. I just don't. Again, I don't know if the processing speed, the athleticism from this guy who's from Russia is going to be enough for a team to reach into the lottery. I think teams that want to guard are going to go with KJ, the guy out of Illinois with a really hard to pronounce Yaku last name there. He's definitely projected to go way before Yegor here. It definitely seems to fit more as a NBA kind of skill set, and with the step back and the low base of gravity that he has, and this man right here, Cedric Howard. Like I would if I was picking, absolutely prefer him as a two-way player. I mean, absolutely knockdown 3-point shooter, absolutely great wing defender, and those are both things that you don't get with Demin here, who's just going to be like a methodical second unit point guard / wing / liability on defense. Cedric Howard here has the potential to be a really good foundational piece of a rotation for years to come, I think, and is a guy who's continued to improve at every stop along the way. So I think he goes in the lottery and Yegor does not.
Yeah, agreed. Pivotal pick if you want to label people lottery or not lottery. But more importantly, I think there's a number of names that make more sense on a lot of teams than does Igor. Yegor, I know you looked at the pronunciation. Yegor, yeah.
Igor, yeah.
Igor, that's a fire name. So for Igor, there's a number of names. I'll throw out another name that I like more. Thomas Sorber as well, the other Georgetown big, who's just like a 7 foot, I think it was 7'6" wingspan for Sorber, coming in. Another raw player, but he's got the length that just, like you said, two-way player that will make more sense. Has a slightly more, I would say a more polished offensive game, but not necessarily as a scorer. He was actually a pretty good passer for somebody his size, and that does sort of insinuate some high IQ stuff as well. A guy that can be really available. So if you get some of those head-to-head bets as well in terms of like Sorber versus a guy like Igor or Coward, et cetera, then like I think those are good ways to look. I could see Igor dropping to like 19, 20 based on some of the projections that I'm reading from a couple of the bettors that I trust, especially. So one more thing I'll say though, as we're talking about these picks, is like careful with if you're spending big money on this. Like, books are kind of looking for people who are they label sharps, because the draft night is a sharps betting game, much more so than sort of the massive public betting game, right? The public wants the quick fix of like watching a guy hit a three to make their parlay go up and whatever, right? But for this stuff, it's a lot more of the sharps, and this is one way they are identifying people. And one way to do that would be get really good CLV on a guy that's at like a minus 120 bet and put a big number on it. Just be a little bit careful with that. That's some of the advice I've been getting. Let me close it out though, saying that like if you want to throw like a couple hundred here and there, or if you want to put a nice parlay together with a couple of these things, I like a bunch of these under overs because I think there's a ton of value. And one that we're still getting value on is Jeremiah Fears, because you actually get a little bit better odds for him to go under. And this is a guy who might have helped himself more than any, I think, with the workouts. That seems to be the scuttlebutt, is that like watching him after a while was like, damn, this dude should be going either 5 or 6 at this point. Like specifically Utah or Washington would really love to have this dude. So you're talking about the 5th and the 6th pick at that point, right? And I think for Fears, like if he goes to Utah, the thought here on F5 is like they don't really have a guard of the future. If you don't consider Isaiah Collier the guard of the future as far as primary ball handler and playmaker, then this would be the guy that you'd be looking for, because he lived in the paint. He did exactly what guys like Colin Sexton have been historically really good at doing. But I don't think anyone thinks Sexton is the future of the Utah Jazz backcourt, in which case they're still looking for that, especially because Keontae George, who they still like, and I'm sure Utah still has their stock invested in Keontae George, not necessarily looking to move him, but they appear to be bringing him off ball, because that's what he was playing a lot more of last year. Even when he came off the bench and at times was playing with Collier coming off the bench, he was not the second option, but he was the off-ball primary scoring option. And they look at him as more of a scorer. Fears doesn't have the three-point shot necessarily, but that would be a big fit there. And then similarly in Washington, they let go. Jordan Poole is now in New Orleans. CJ and Marcus Smart, right? Chris Middleton, those types of guys with contracts that they can get off the books in the next season, they're going to be around, and they're there to mentor a guy exactly like Jeremiah Fears. And if someone like Ace Bailey fell to them, that would be where they'd want to go. That's the type of raw athlete that fits the timeline of Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George, et cetera, those guys on Washington. So the fit that he makes, the stock has risen enough for him that he can make sense in a top 5 or 6 pick. So this number at 6.5 is perfect for me, with 2 options that are highly likely to want him.
Yeah, I think you can straddle that if you want. I think you could also take the 2-1 for him to be exactly the 6th pick, because I think Washington pretty much tipped their hand. Like, that's exactly the type of like intel you're talking about, when they're like, we're going to get CJ McCollum here, who we're probably just going to buy out, just like they did Chris Paul, right? I mean, they're not going to keep a veteran like that on the team. So we're just literally clearing space in our backcourt to take a guard in the draft tomorrow.
Well, real quick, not that it's super important because it doesn't change the point, but I could see them keeping CJ because they don't have anything else on their books. And after next season, they get to clear him, they get to clear Middleton, they get to clear Smart, and that's a lot of money. But even if they buy him out now or they let him walk next year, I think they're going to be inside the cap enough this year to be able to make it work, because it's all rookies and high minimum vets.
All right. Well, we'll see. Yeah. I mean, I hope for CJ's sake that he gets to go finish his career somewhere. I know he's not necessarily going to want to stay there, but yeah, I like Fears as a fit there. I think it makes sense. He's everything we're talking about, with Yegor as far as like the slow processing speed. Like, Fears is the opposite, right? I mean, he's a guy who's going to make quick decisions in the NBA and fit in right away, kind of off the bench role, or with a rebuilding team. So yeah. That's our draft coverage. We got some new markets here. Of course, I'm talking about the Celtics because that's my brand here. But if you've been following the show, we are both kind of negative about our teams in terms of betting angles. I just think the values here to back the Celtics at this moment. I mean, it literally 30 minutes after they unloaded Porzingis for just George Niang and a second round pick, this number is probably going up, both these numbers. So plus 300 right now to make the Eastern Conference Finals, which would be the 7th time in 10 years if they do that. This is the point being, this organization does not just like take gap years or like not be competitive. They're going to continue to wheel and deal here. Brad Stevens, I think the track record speaks for itself as far as like one of the best GMs in just like 3 or 4 years here, turning assets around. So Holiday and Porzingis out the door, but we do have Simons just like injecting life in that offense, and like no shade at all. Peyton Pritchard is absolutely ready to take off. Like that dude, man. I mean, some of the advanced defensive metrics too. like he is one of the better guards in the NBA. Like let's throw out
Say it.
all
Say
the
it with your
cliche. Yeah,
chest.
it's just like yeah, give him run. So I think they're gonna have a solid regular season. I think like guys like Kada will just step right in and play center and give them enough rim protection that they have a chance to maybe win the Atlantic, to maybe finish with a better record than your Knicks. If you are thinking about the playoffs though, I mean Jason Tatum has a legit chance to be back for the playoffs. I know everyone's like, oh, this like write him off for the whole year. You don't necessarily need 12 months to get back on the court from an Achilles. Could be 9, could be 10. And Tatum is a guy who I would bet on as far as like just being an absolute, you know, rehab phenom, basically. Just like watching the old Kobe documentary, Kobe coming back from the Achilles, right? He's another Kobe stan, and is a guy who just like does things the right way. Very good work ethic. I think he could be back in March or April, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, the Celtics, with almost their same core that won the title 2 years ago, and I've got a ticket for 3-1 that they just are in the Final Four here. Might be feeling pretty good about that in the week East.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you then, like the Celtics are playing the Cavs in the conference semis. You like them with this version of that team without knowing anything right now on paper, knowing that like the guys that have shown up for Boston in the playoffs versus the guys who have not shown up in the playoffs for Cleveland. Would you take that? You would like to have that ticket for them to win that series essentially 3-1, right? To make the conference finals.
Yeah, exactly. Like I wouldn't bet it if it was even odds. Celtics versus Cavs in terms of like, yes, we get Tatum, but we don't. It's just a question mark as
Right.
far as who is the center.
Right.
Yeah, which is where we stand right now. Like I would still take the Celtics with juiced odds. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even the reason I brought up the Cavs is not because I even necessarily think they're the best in the East in terms of a playoff team. They might be the best in the regular season once again. I wouldn't doubt it. I would just doubt that they should be considered the favorites in the East once we get into the postseason. And the other reason, though, is like they're the only team that we know what we're getting next season, I think. And the Knicks, whatever you think that is. Like we know what we're getting from those two teams because they're going to look the most similar to how they were this year, barring some random Jared Allen trade finally or something like that in Cleveland. Orlando, we don't know that much about. Because they got Desmond Bain and because there's another year of 22-year-old Franz and Paolo to get better. And then, the other squads there, like I think we think everybody's less and Halliburton's going to have an even longer time until he returns than Tatum at this point, most likely. So that's why I brought it up. I like it. I think I don't like the Drew Holiday trade for them to win this year. That's the thing. And you could say that we'll see if Drew has a down year again and sort of takes another step back in a way that goes, okay, this seems to be father time now taking over for Drew Holiday. If that's the case, then you did what you did. You got the best out of it that you could. And I agree with the trade. But if Drew shows that he's Drew even of like 2 years ago, then like that would have been a massive help for them to do stuff this year. And that would be the biggest question, the thing that sort of like I think holds them back from being able to make it that far is how crucial he was to every single part of their game, offense and defense. But I don't need to know too much about this squad to go like, I'm all in, jump on the train, y'all, if you want. Like this is an easy time to pick the Magic. It's been, I picked them to win the Atlantic the last 2 seasons. 2 years ago, it looked smart because it was 10-1. Last year, though, it was like 3-1.
The Southeast.
The Southeast, excuse me. The Southeast. Yes, it's been a while. So yeah, that's in part because of the weakness going on in the Southeast, as we know, with Miami taking those steps back. But most importantly here for them, I do like the win the East at plus 550. I cannot imagine that. I'm confident that in the first week of the season, first week or two of the NBA season, that's going to be down to like plus 150, plus 250 in that range. Like they're going to just plummet because they're going to look like one of the better teams. That's how much faith I have in them. I do think they're a top 2 team now in the East. Just put them there. The Desmond Bain addition, you could say the bench is weak in a way, and I could understand that, but I don't fully. That's been the biggest criticism I've seen with the way that they're now moving forward. I don't believe like Cole Anthony is a true backup guard that you want to give big minutes to in like a conference finals necessarily. But I do think if Mo Wagner can come back by that point in the season, Goga is definitely a good backup center. Then you've got, I think Caleb Houston takes another step forward, and Anthony Black, if he takes another step forward as well, you've got something there. And Anthony Black, I think, just got his ability to drink alcohol. Like he might be 22 at this point, so they've got some room to grow, and that would be the only way that I would think that they would be in trouble. But like Desmond Bane, the last thing I'll say is like the Desmond Bane trade's so funny. I've always been, I thought, a bigger fan of Desmond Bane than maybe the sort of public opinion of Desmond Bane necessarily. I'm sure people respect him enough, but I think he's better than he gets the credit for at times, maybe because of not showing up in certain moments. Whatever. There was a lot of dysfunction in Memphis over the years, and I think Desmond Bane was the most consistent player that they had. I think he's going to shine and soar in this deal. And post-op narrative is so weird around him. Like, you gave up what for Desmond Bane? What? It's like, nah, this is going to work. This is definitely worth 4 picks like that.
They gave up less than your Knicks for Mikal Bridges. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, on certain level, Orlando over New York, sure. It's basically, yeah, we're both saying the same thing, which is the East is wide open. And if you can get 3-1 on teams that you think will have a legit shot down the line, go for it. I mean, I'd also throw the Atlanta Hawks in there at 12-1 at the moment. If Porzingis is suddenly not sick next year and is playing at a high level, that and they're getting Jalen Johnson back, the Hawks could make some noise. The Pistons at 7-1 at the moment. We're talking just to make the East Finals again, not win the East. I think the Pistons could make a big move maybe for a vet or a scorer, and then they could be in the mix. But we're basically fading the Cavs and Knicks as your consensus favorites because the Cavs have been routine failures in the playoffs, and because the Knicks legit don't have a coach at the moment, and they're an injury away from just, collapsing. So, I mean, Orlando dealt with their injuries last year. They're young. They're talented. Definitely going to be a regular season win total to look at here. A regular season machine, I think. We'll hold out and see how they look in the playoffs, though.
100%, yeah. And the Knicks, as Obi Toppin put it, he hated being on the Knicks because he hated standing in the corner and watching one guy do everything. Might be getting close to that point as well with the Knicks, where it's like, could we have a backup play for Jalen Brunson barrel his way into the lane and hope things work off of that? That'd be great. All right, that is all the time we have for you in the draft. A little futures talk for you as well. Hopefully, we will be back with you guys sooner rather than later. Definitely some things working over at lineups that we'll be having some announcements, I'm sure, over the summer and into football season as well. So best of luck with everything, and until we see you next, happy betting.